Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the VolQuest.com podcast with Austin Price and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Tuesday. Plenty to get to, but before we get started on all the latest on the Vols, we want to welcome new sponsor to the podcast, and that's our friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Be sure and check them out. They're East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies for a variety of ailments. They got 4 locations to serve you. One in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and their newest location is in Knoxville at 8018 Kingston Pike. That's across from Trader Joe's, if you know where that's at on Kingston Pike, or you can buy their products online at their website at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. So be sure and check them out. And again, we want to welcome them, and because we're welcoming them in as a new sponsor, they want to start it off the right way by welcoming you to any of their store locations. If you mention VolQuest in person at their store, they're going to give you 15% off of your total purchase price. That's an in-store purchases only. So thanks to our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. You're going to hear plenty more about them in the coming weeks and months here on the VolQuest.com podcast. Again, with Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Hope everybody is doing well. Guys, Tennessee getting ready to play Pitt. You've had a chance to digest plenty of Tennessee. You've had a chance to look at a little bit of Pitt. Let's talk about Tennessee first. Austin, I'll start with you. Your takeaway after 4 days of Tennessee playing a game, and then Josh Heupel talking after the game, and then Josh Heupel meeting with the media on Monday. What's your takeaway from Tennessee in week 1?
It could be way better, and it could be way worse. I think that's the best way to look at it. I mean, Tennessee didn't play a perfect game. They had their fair share of mistakes, but when you look around college football, they didn't have a Mississippi State, last second gasp to win by 1. They didn't, lose the game like a couple other Power 5 teams did. They found a way, to win by 32 points. And again, they did so by not playing perfect. They've got to be better, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and they got to be better at quarterback. So, we'll see if that is able to happen this week. I know a lot of snap judgments have been made about, the team Thursday. I think some of those people that kind of were so quick Thursday night to kind of go down that road of negativity have since come back around a little bit because they were able to see what happened on Saturday.
Rob, Austin brings up an interesting point. Does your view of it change when you see Montana beat Washington, a 20th ranked team, and you saw a lot of other close games? Does that kind of slow down and kind of change the viewing on things because Tennessee didn't win 55-10 as I thought they would? Does that change anything at all for you?
No, I mean, not really. I would was kind of like AP. I hadn't made any dramatic conclusions about this team after one game. The way it seems some fans have. I mean, does Joe Milton need to be better? Absolutely, but I don't think you take one game and really, one 3 bad quarters and decide that's what he is as a quarterback. And to me, that was like everybody else. That's what I was most interested in seeing last Thursday. And I mean, you can't make it look pretty. I mean, for 3 quarters, he was really bad, but I don't think that's necessarily, you don't close the book on it because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that he was the only one that was bad in those 3 quarters. I don't think that the receivers were great during that stretch either, and I think the offensive line had some struggles and some protection issues when Jerome Carvin was forced to play center, and that's not to say Carvin's a bad player, but I mean that's not his most natural position. He's better suited at guard, and I think it took him a while to adjust a little bit, and I think Bowling Green changed the way they adjusted. My biggest surprise, I guess, my biggest takeaway from the Joe Milton show was the fact that he missed the 2 deep balls. That was a bigger takeaway for me than the fact that offensively that I thought the whole unit lost their rhythm, not just Joe Milton. I thought the whole unit lost rhythm when Bowling Green changed some things around and Tennessee had the injury up front. They had a couple of drop passes. But if you just said going in that he was going to miss both of those deep balls that were that open, that would have been a surprise to me. And in Austin, the other surprise is that his deep ball guy was Cedric Tillman, which I didn't really see coming into the game either. So the deep ball stuff was kind of a bigger snap judgment to me than anything else was in the Joe Milton performance.
Well, I did. We got to see Joe. He was on Outkick 360 before we went on Friday. And I asked him specifically, about throwing those deep posts to Cedric Tillman. Like, about him, that being his deep target versus another guy that maybe runs a little bit faster. And he said, Cedric Tillman's plenty fast enough. He goes, it boils down to Cedric Tillman gets off press man better than anybody else at wide receiver we have. And so, that was what allowed him, to get open. And he goes, I just overthrew him. He goes, that's on me. I mean, he owned it. I mean,
sure.
Nobody,
sure.
He said,
well, he clearly did. I was just surprised that he overthrew both of those. It was my point.
Yeah. And you don't know how much, kind of just emotion, you kind of get the blood flowing a little bit and you get juiced up and throw it a little bit. It's just like when, a golfer, hits the ball 10 yards further when he gets amped up, you have to kind of account for that. I'm not making excuses for him because, he's got to be better. But I wonder if that's part of the overthrow. Is just he was just so juiced up when he saw, Tillman beat his man that, he just didn't account for the extra juice when he threw it.
Yeah. What do you guys make of the whole discussion about touch, Rob, about how, that's a real detriment to him because he doesn't have a lot of touch? I thought the two balls Hyatt dropped were just drops. I didn't see that as a big issue there. I just thought, those are two balls you got to catch, particularly the one at the goal line. To me, touch is when you hit a guy in the head on a swing pass and about knock him out, and I didn't think touch was that big of an issue with Joe Milton. Does he throw the ball hard? Yes. But I didn't see that as a huge takeaway from Thursday night.
No, my biggest takeaway, and if Hyatt makes those two catches, he still hasn't had a great game, but it's better. It looks better, and it doesn't take much for that stat line to turn around. Hyatt catching two balls that were right on him, and Milton making one of the two deep throws. If that happens, his night. He's thrown for 200 yards, a touchdown. It's not great, but it doesn't look as bad as it did.
If he hit connects on just those two deep balls, it's 52-6, and his stat line is another 120 yards. Rob's right in a lot of ways. It's more how they won and the mistakes that Milton made being the mistakes that Jarrett has made here for several years that just opened the wounds. I get it. If I'm a Vol fan, I understand. You guys, the people on the board think that we're like naive to that. Like we understand, but I also think to judge anybody off one game is just like had he went and run for 100 yards and thrown for 300 yards and combined for 6 scores, it would have been wrong to judge him based off of that because they were playing Bowling Green. So I just let the season play out a little bit. You said coming out of the stadium, the Crompton analogy is the perfect analogy. How much can he improve? Because Crompton against UCLA in 2009, guys, was totally different than Crompton late in that year.
Oh, no question. No doubt about that in any way, shape, or form. And I'm with. He patted the ball, he held the ball, a lot of those things that Vol fans did not want to see. I think the other thing, Rob, that I was a little bit taken aback or a little bit surprised by, he wasn't as fleet of foot, or he didn't run as fleet of foot as I thought that he would.
I was surprised. Weren't you surprised that he didn't take on anybody? He stiff armed the guy when he went in for the second score, but when Bender's, he just kind of down.
Or tried to juke, tried to avoid, tried to, make him miss, which I'm with you, AP. It's, he seems like a much more of a take him on than make him miss kind of runner.
Well, and guys, the one thing, he made plays with his legs in fall camp. We all heard about that. But again, wearing your red jersey, you're not going to get hit. It's a little bit easier to make those plays, much like, in fall camp when you're wearing the red jersey and you can't really show what you can do if you're Hendon Hooker. I think that's almost a detriment to his game because I think part of his game is the ability to make people miss in the open field and move around.
All right, I don't disagree with that. Let's look at some other things and not just the Joe Milton, because that was not the only takeaway from the game. Obviously, that was at the forefront of everybody. Rob, how concerning or how I guess concerning maybe is the right word, when you hear Joe Milton say Cedric Tillman's the best at beating press man coverage, when you know this week that's what Tennessee's going to get, that they're going to get a ton of press man coverage. That group to me has to really step up at receiver this week and be much more physical. I know Josh Heupel said he expected it and they would be fine there, but they're going to have to show it on Saturday, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, it's not a surprise that Tillman gets that gets that kind of compliment. He is the biggest, most physical guy they have out there, but by quite a bit. I think the challenge this week is on specifically Jalen Hyatt might be Tennessee's most talented receiver, but he's not their most physical receiver. And if he's going to put himself in position to make big plays, to use his speed, he's going to have to be able to get off the line.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And that'll be a challenge for him and for the other receivers as well. Tennessee expected to have Jimmy Callaway back this weekend. Rob, what did you make of the Tennessee running backs? I mean, they rushed for a bunch of yards against the team that you should have, but what was your takeaway from the tailbacks, Rob?
Really impressed. And I mean, it kind of was a reflection of what the coaches have been saying. I mean, they've expressed some quiet confidence in a position group that, the leading rusher last year came back with 22 or 20, is it a 22 or 26 rushing attempts? I mean, for that Jabari got last year, but they had pretty clearly, Alex Golish, Jerry Mack had liked what they had seen from those guys in fall camp. And I think that showed up on Thursday. And I was really impressed with Tyon. And I don't want to take anything away from Jabari, but I know AP's been tooting that horn for a long time now. I thought he looked really good. I mean, I think Tennessee has two quality SEC tailbacks.
Well, my thing is they're going to have to really expand the depth, though, because you remember a couple of weeks ago when who was it? Was it Jerry Mack or was it Heupel? What coach said? We got to be ready to play 4, 5, 6 guys, and then it took them to literally the last carry or last play of the third quarter before Jalen Wright went in. And then, of course, he was just really, really impatient, wanted to try to bounce things. You could tell he'd just kind of pent up on the sideline, ready to, bust at the seams. So, I think they're going to have to get him more run going forward, and try to rely on him more because, again, you just never know when you're going to get hit, by injury or, look at Georgia right now. I mean, they've got, Kirby come out on Monday talking about how many kids they have out with COVID that are breakthrough cases. So you just never know when that's going to hit and affect your team.
Yeah, Georgia, I think, talk about at least 4 right now. Tennessee needs some depth there. And they didn't expand a whole lot with the running backs, Rob. I mean, they were effective, but it was a pretty simplistic run game and pretty simplistic use of the running backs. Nothing out nothing out in the flat, nothing in the passing game there really with the running backs. They were, when you talk about being vanilla, they were about as vanilla there as they were at any position, I thought, on the football field. Now, they played well. Don't get me wrong. I thought Evans and Small played well, Rob, but it was pretty simplistic in what they were doing in the run game. I thought, how they used them.
I was really surprised that they only got one catch between them, and I'm not sure. I'll have to look about how many targets they have. But Jabari had 1 reception, and especially when as you get into that game, and Joe Milton was obviously struggling. I was a little surprised that they didn't try to just give him a couple of easy ones, some gimmies to maybe get him back in his groove.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know exactly what Bowling Green was doing schematics. They were certainly giving up the 5-yard hitch in the first 2 drives, and making some easy throws outside the hash. And they clearly took that away and started playing some different type zone stuff that it looked like everybody had a good bit of trouble with. So while there's questions offensively, and you knew there would be, and look, it's one game. Nobody's, it's about how much this team grows from week to week. Defensively, solid start. I mean, I get Bowling Green's not very good offensively, but from where that unit was in my mind in spring to where they were Thursday night, I mean, solid is the best way I can describe it, because I didn't think they were very good at all at spring. I know they've added some pieces, but those pieces weren't just huge in terms of their production Thursday night, the new guys. There were some veteran players who showed up and played pretty well.
I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but I mean, I thought that was the best that Tennessee defense has looked in a long time, just based off the fact that how many times have they let an inferior opponent come in here and get a couple of touchdowns and look rather easily and look, easily do so. I mean, Tennessee allowed, a couple of, rub plays, pick plays, whatever, to wheel route and kind of move between the 20s, but Bowling Green never sniffed the end zone. I mean, I was really impressed with the fact that they just, they did not allow them to score a touchdown, kick two long field goals.
I was impressed. I don't just look at the raw numbers because I think Bowling Green was really bad up front.
Sure, they were.
But what impresses me about is Tennessee had no bust. I mean, maybe they had something in passing game. They didn't play exactly right, but they didn't have anything where somebody just got lost and there's a receiver or back running wide open down the field. They look mentally sharp. Like, hats off to Tim Banks and the players. I mean, they executed, I think, at a pretty high level.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have substitution issues. They appeared to, for the most part, to get lined up everywhere. I'm sure they had some missed assignments here or there, but you didn't feel like they were overwhelmed at any point in time with managing the game plan and managing the system. Again, I'm sure it was pretty vanilla in some things that they did, but they played a lot of bodies. Austin, 11 up front, more linebackers. They played more linebackers than I thought they would play. I was a little surprised they didn't play those two transfer corners any. They didn't get either one of them really any reps. That was a surprise to me. And they didn't do much at safety other than the two, your two safeties. So a little bit surprised by that. But up front, the front seven, I mean, they ended up playing about 17, 18 guys in the front seven, which I think they wanted to look at some linebackers, and then I think Rodney Garner is going to play somewhere between 9 and 12 guys a game, depending on how the game's going. I think he's going to rotate a bunch of bodies up there right now.
Which, with the fact that Tennessee wants to score fast, if they can ever get some momentum and rhythm on offense, defense is going to be out there more. Having those kind of numbers up front could play huge dividends, later in football games.
Yeah, they could, and you had some flashes from guys. I like Tremblay. I did. I liked what he did. I thought he showed up a couple of times. I thought Tyler Barron showed up some. And again, I'm with you, Rob. Bowling Green is not very good, so you don't just look at the raw, yardage gained or whatever. But they held them out of the end zone, Austin, as you mentioned, and they weren't lost, which I think takes away, is a big takeaway and an important takeaway from this team. As we kind of wrap up football here, this is an interesting game. We'll dive into this more, obviously. Ben and Eric will have some of this in their pregame podcast. We'll talk about it on the Mailbag podcast. Typically, when teams like this get together and they haven't met in 30 years, there's not a whole lot of knowledge between the two. But when you think about it, I mean, these two teams know each other pretty well. It was just 2 years ago, Josh Heupel's going against Pitt when he's at Central Florida, and Tim Banks has gone against Pittsburgh when he was at Penn State. So, and Pittsburgh's got an idea of what Tim Banks wants to do because of Penn State. There's a pretty good familiarity with two teams that haven't played each other in a long time. So, Rob, I think this game's going to come. It always comes down to execution, but this is going to be more about execution because I don't think either team's going to be surprised by what they see on Saturday, which is strange for a matchup like this that you don't normally have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and they played twice in 2018, 2019. The first matchup, Heupel whipped them. I think it was 45-14. They had 500 yards of total offense, and then the next year it was a 35-34 shootout that Pitt won. And again, I mean, both times Heupel has seen them, his offense has put up some numbers. You would think that bodes well for Tennessee, but I mean, just like the point you just made, Pitt's not going to be surprised by the high octane offense. They're going to come here with a plan themselves.
I went back and watched that game from 2 years ago, Monday morning.
That's dedication right there, AP.
And looked into that game. One of the things that jumped out and watching that was the way that the way Pitt's offense worked the middle of the football field. That's where Tennessee's going to be challenged in this game. I think is the middle of the field.
Slants.
Yeah, they threw slants. They threw a lot of crossing patterns. They really worked the middle of the football field pretty hard in that game in their passing attack, and we'll see how Tennessee handles that. Now, total different coordinator, obviously, and different defensive scheme. I've not gone and watched Pittsburgh and Penn State play any football tape yet. But I know in the UCF matchup from 2 years ago, there was a ton of middle of the football field plays and throws that were made there. So lots of intriguing matchups, lots to discuss. We'll continue to do that throughout the week. Supposed to talk to Tim Banks and Jerry Mack later today about the running backs, about the defense, talk to a few players as well. Josh Heupel will meet the media again on Thursday to kind of put a bow tie on the week and get you ready for noon against Pittsburgh. This weekend, Austin, because it's Saturday, because it makes a little more sense and works out that way from a recruiting standpoint, going to be some bodies in the house. Taven Jackson says he's going to be here. They may have a couple of official visitors. We'll see what that number ends up looking like. But this is really the first time for Tennessee to showcase themselves in recruiting on the stage. This is a real opportunity for Tennessee if they can go out and play well, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. I don't know if originally the plan was to have Joshua Josephs and CJ Madden here. I don't know if either one of those kids is going to be here. I don't believe CJ Madden will be, and I don't think Joshua Josephs will be either. Ephesians Prysock is the locked-in official visitor as of now. We'll see if they add anybody to that. Of course, he plays for Casey Clausen, who was here this past weekend. And then, I think a handful of 2023s are coming up here. Ethan Crisp from Mount Juliet, Bryson Sanders from down in Chattanooga. The boys, Eric and Ben, talked to, our guy at Carnes, Deshaun Bishop, and he said he planned on coming over. So, again, you're right. With Taven Jackson here, I think Brody Foley may be here as well. It's a chance to showcase. And then a guy like Ephesians Prysock, you need help in the secondary. Casey Clausen sure has played up Tennessee to the kid as far as like the atmosphere. If it is a good atmosphere, then that's a real chance to kind of showcase, because as Caleb Tremblay pointed out on the locker room, as he's pointed out in media settings throughout fall camp, the atmosphere here for a game against Bowling Green with 80,000 was bigger than anything he's had at USC.
It's crazy to think, isn't it, Rob?
It just means more, boys.
It does. I mean, it's a different vibe, and it's been that way for a long time. That's why Casey Clausen ended up playing here, and that's why a lot of those California guys came with him. Now, you got to win to get those guys, and they're not just going to come for the atmosphere, but that's why so many of those guys outside the region have interest in the SEC, is because a Thursday night game, against Bowling Green, where you're a 5-touchdown favorite, has a better atmosphere vibe than a Pac-12 matchup that USC's playing against somebody. I mean, there were more. There were about as many LSU fans in the stands at the Rose Bowl as there was UCLA fans. Now, they left very unhappy, and UCLA's had a field day with Ed Orgeron as a result of it. And what happened pregame there. But I mean, LSU was in droves out there. So I get it. You're right, Austin. That atmosphere could be big for Tennessee, and we'll see. Austin, do you think? I don't think Tennessee's going to go out. Do you think they're going to go out anywhere Friday night? Much? No. I mean, I don't think they will.
Not this week. Right? I think Tennessee Tech the following week. I know it's the same game time, but it's a little
different
easier
opponent.
To get out.
Yeah, different opponent.
A little different opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine they would go out this Friday night, but they will be back out next Friday night, but before the Tennessee Tech game, which again is a noon start as well. Rob, Hoops visitors, anything coming down the pike this week, or is that going to be a bit later in the month?
Got Deshaun Wallace coming in next week. Not this week. 17th.
Tennessee Tech week. Okay.
17th, and I am trying to find out about Brandon Miller. I've been told yes, I've been told no. He put out a top 4 last week with Tennessee not in it. He had it about 10 days after he set up an official visit to Tennessee. That's a weird one, and I'm trying to lock down exactly what he is going to do, because like I said, I've had different people, both of whom I would think know what's going on there, tell me different things.
So we'll see what happens, but that's going to be 2 weeks from now on the Hoops front, right? Nothing this weekend.
Because if Miller's coming, he's coming this weekend.
Okay, so
Deshaun Wallace is definitely coming unless he cancels.
Right, but he's coming the following weekend.
What's the latest with Wallace?
Tennessee and Kentucky. A lot of people seem to think Kentucky's got some mojo working, but I think him getting out of that official visit without committing, Tennessee getting the last visit, getting him back on campus. Just a little over less than 3 months when he was here for an official visit in June. I think Tennessee feels kind of quietly confident. Certainly not cocky by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's a dogfight.
As we close it out the gate, your takeaway from the SEC in week one?
Vanderbilt's trash.
and Alabama is just an absolute machine.
They really are. I mean, it's so true. And I don't even think they played that great. That's the thing. I'm not sure. I think defensively, Alabama's really, 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 really good. I'm not so sure on the Alabama offense. I just don't think that Miami defense is very good. I mean, I just don't know how good Miami is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by that score. I thought Alabama would manhandle Miami. I didn't think Miami was ready for that, and they certainly weren't. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just saying, AP, is it Georgia's year?
I mean, Pinocchio. Pinocchio.
They're pretty good in the front seven. Now, I think Clemson's got some clear offensive line issues, and they got a quarterback who was overwhelmed and struggled there. But that Georgia front seven is pretty stout.
I was surprised that Georgia's offense, though, just did nothing. But I'm not saying that. Yeah, but to not score an offensive touchdown, I'm not saying that they would go score 30 points, but to not score one offensive touchdown, I mean, are you not surprised about that? Because I am. Like, I would have bet a good sum of money that Georgia scores at least one offensive touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, with the talent they have at tailback, even if I don't think JT Daniels is very good. Maybe he's going to prove me wrong, and I also don't think Georgia's really explosive at receiver with Pickens gone. But still, with the talent, the stable of running backs they have, I'm with you, AP. To not bang one in, that was eye opening.
Yeah, they're not. They were very depleted at the receiver position. I know they're not going to get Pickens back, but we'll see if some of these other guys and how they come along. I mean, I guess my biggest takeaway from that game is I'm not ready. I'm definitely not going to anoint Georgia anything, but I'm not sure if that's Georgia's really that good or if Clemson's really got some real issues and they're really exposed on the offensive side of the ball for the first time in a long time. Before, if I were a Georgia fan, I would be like, okay, that was pretty good. If I were a Clemson fan, I'd be much more nervous. Much more nervous if I was a Clemson fan.
We are a long way from Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback position.
A long, long, long way from that. So everything else kind of, I mean, like you said at the start of the podcast, Austin, it's week one. You don't put a ton of stock in it. You got Mississippi State has to rally late. You got Arkansas struggles early, then puts them away. I mean, South Carolina plays a team that's just woeful. And you mentioned Vanderbilt and how bad they were. Hats off to Randy Sanders and the program at ETSU for going down there and not just pulling an upset, but absolutely throttling and manhandling Vanderbilt in that game, which is exactly what they did. And I know all of us have dealt with Coach Sanders for a long time, and good for him. I mean, that he's brought that program a long ways, and good for them for going down there and just manhandling them.
Two things that Randy Sanders and Jay Graham do, and that's beat Vanderbilt. And for those that don't know, Jay's helping Randy out as the quality control coach.
And they went down there and they certainly beat Vanderbilt and took care of that. So we'll see what week two brings. Obviously for Tennessee, it's a very different week as a very challenging opponent comes in. Tennessee, an underdog at home to start the week as Pittsburgh comes to town. We'll have full coverage of the Panthers and the Vols throughout the week, and the Johnny Majors Classic that's coming up, and all of our coverage. And again, we'll have the Mailbag podcast coming up on Thursday. Don't forget Ben and Eric's podcast on Saturday morning on your way to the stadium to get you ready for the Vols and the Panthers. But that's going to do it for this edition of the VolQuest.com podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. Don't forget to check them out online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. 4 locations to serve you in East Tennessee: Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, and the newest location on Kingston Pike across from Trader Joe's. But you can get everything online as well at their website, SmokyMountainOrganics.com. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.